So one of the sites that we had the privilege of visiting in Guadeloupe on our Call 300 Study Away trip was a site on the UNESCO slave route called the Cemetery of Enslaved People. And it's one of the best preserved slave cemeteries and the ones that we know the most about in the entire Caribbean. And as part of kind of representing the site, I thought a lot about the way it was conveyed to us during the trip. So right before we went there, we actually got to speak with a French tourist that took our photo. And in that conversation, we told her that we were going to visit this Cemetery of Enslaved People. And she said, "Oh, you're going to be so disappointed. There's actually nothing there to find." And something that I took away from that was there really wasn't anything there for this French tourist to find, but there might be something there for other people to find, particularly people whose memory and whose history kind of has to do with this site. And so in creating this very layered cemetery, I thought about those memories and thought about the layers that the archaeologists found from the site. So on top we have this layer of nature, of nothingness, of the ways in which it was left to nature instead of creating some sort of cemetery. It's not like any cemetery in Guadeloupe. There aren't these kind of different complex patterns that we find on a lot of cemeteries in Guadeloupe. There aren't any tombstones. There's really just nature and pollution. And I also convey kind of the history of exploitation through tourism on the top by including an ad for tourism in Guadeloupe right on the top. And also in a bottle, I put the statement that was told to us by that French tourist, telling us that there wasn't anything there. And then in the next layer, I represented the slave bones, and I represented them in lots of different colors. And so I found these skulls that were multicolored to represent kind of the history of diversity and Creole tradition embedded in the history of Guadeloupe, as it is a site with so many different cultural influences. And that started with slaves being brought there, and then all these different influences starting kind of with that history. So I conveyed that, and then also the history of colonialism and domestic labor through some like colonial style domestic objects. And then the next layer and the final layer, or well, the close to final layer, is the Native American bones, which archaeologists found underneath of those slave bones, which kind of conveys also this like multiplicity, this double suffering that is demonstrated. And I made them in a cross because despite the fact that we don't know a lot about the Native American bones that were found there, we do know about the history of kind of the imposition of Christian tradition on Native people. And so I tried to convey that history in the site. And then the final layer is just dirt. But the only thing left to be found there is this flower which grows through each of the layers. And inside of that, where that flower grows, is a bottle with a poem in it. And the poem is a poem that was written on the site. It was on a board, and it was really the only thing there, like naming really what the site was this poem that represented like the trauma and the suffering and the necessity of remembering in this tradition. And the point of demonstrating all of that and having you do all that digging is to know that really all that's left, all that really has to be there is the memory and the expression of the memory of slavery. And so